Introductions, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Bill Wetzen. I've lived in Fairbanks for almost 30 years.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
So to start, can you share about the history of ACT UP and what their purpose was during the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and 90s?
I was in San Francisco, and ACT UP was one entity at one point in time, and it divided into ACT UP Golden Gate, which was I was a part of, and ACT UP San Francisco, which was a part I was not a part of. There were a lot of people dying in the early 1980s, and there was no one to unleash any power or feel like there was anybody protecting us. So we decided that if no one was going to protect us, we had to do it ourselves. So we founded ACT UP. Then it divided into two because there was a division between the two entities, shall we say, and ACT UP Golden Gate wanted to do it within government institutions and make it work and forcefully, delicately try and get drugs out on the marketplace and experiment with drugs in order to prevent and figure out how people were dying and why people were dying. Because in the early 1980s, we had no idea how it was transmitted, and we were pretty much left alone to figure it out by ourselves. And ACT UP San Francisco wanted to be the same thing, but a lot more on your face. They would be the ones that would go to Congress and try and start debates on the floor at the same time when certain party members of Congress weren't even engaging in AIDS or HIV. And in the early 1980s, there was no one helping us other than ourselves.
And specifically, how did Larry Kramer and the ACT UP organization that you saw bring more needed attention during that epidemic?
Larry Kramer wrote a book called Faggot. And in that book, he tried to install in people that it was up to us to take care of ourselves. And if you didn't, basically silence equaled death. So that's where that came from. And without Larry Kramer, I don't think ACT UP Golden Gate or San Francisco would be where it was in the early 1980s through the 1990s.
It sounds like it was really influential and powerful to empower.
It was. It was. I went to San Francisco and had to stay there because I kind of lost my house here in here in Fairbanks. So I stayed in San Francisco for approximately 6 years, joined ACT UP, and then I was one of the few people at ACT UP at that juncture in time that wasn't HIV positive. I seroconverted, and then I was part of ACT UP already, and I just had a chance and an opportunity to do as much as I could to try and help other people. And it was overwhelming at one point in time. It really was. I was only 3 digits away from having full-blown AIDS at that juncture in time. I went on, I forget what it's called now, the first drug. AZT was terrible. AZT was a terrible drug for me. I didn't like it at all. In some respects, AZT was worse than having HIV.
There was a lot going on for you personally and trying to help other people.
Well, we had no choice in the matter. We all had to help each other out. You literally watched people 20 years old turn 80 years old in a matter of 6 months. that have lesions on their faces. But the worst was when they would get Alzheimer's and they wouldn't even recognize you and they would just go off on a tangent. And it was just some of the worst things I can ever imagine. I'm so glad that the drugs are out there for the young people today. I really, really am. There's so many people that lay down their lives in order to have the drugs that they're out there today. We're really, really quite blessed to have them. We really are. And I know clinical trials where nobody came out alive. And they all put down their lives so people could have the drugs they have today. So it kind of hurts when I hear young people today. I'm so old. I sound so preachy, but it kind of hurts to hear people complaining about the side effects of the drugs when I was their age, there were no, the only side effects you had was dying. You had to prepare to die. And you went to lawyers to try and make sure that your lover or your husband could be taken care of after you were dead. Because it was only a matter of time. There were very, very few people that got it and were asymptomatic and never had it. It was very few and in between.
Definitely come a long way. So thinking more about the present, do you have any favorite organizations that people could support today to help fund current research and projects?
Well, IAA, San Francisco General Hospital, Boston, Massachusetts Hospital, New York hospitals, any of the hospitals that have anything to do with HIV and making sure that it's contained. It's just so ironic that where we are today with the pandemic is so relative to where we were in the early 1980s, but the drugs are there for them now. And I don't see why people won't want to take them. And I think my people that had died, not my people per se, but the people that died today would be very, very proud of what they have done. Because today I just heard that protease inhibitors are what they are giving people in third world nations now to help people with COVID. So those people not only helped the gay community, but they're helping the heterosexual community now. And I'm so proud to be part of that.
And thinking specifically about stigma, are there any messages you want to share with our community about stigma surrounding HIV and AIDS and how to stop it?
I don't know. I lived in San Francisco. There really was no stigma. I mean, you had stigma because you didn't want your family members to know you had HIV, but as far as stigma with your friends and lovers and just other people you'd meet in a bar or something like that, you could tell them that you had HIV. You could actually not have to worry about it, because in San Francisco, it wasn't just quote unquote drug people that got it or people that were less than that got it. It was everybody that got HIV, doctors, lawyers, policemen. There were no lines drawn. You could be dating a lawyer and me as a server be married to that lawyer and he would be sick as well as you being sick. There was no stigma as far as a caste system, for that lack of a better word. But today, the stigma shouldn't even be there, because if you're taking your drugs adherently, you're just as healthy as any person out on the street. You can't give HIV to anybody because you're undetectable. There is no virus in your body, basically. So the stigma today should really be about preventing HIV, which would be really, really using condoms, I'm all for PrEP. I understand what PrEP does, but I also understand that PrEP is also a way for you to have unsafe sex. It's only there for you to prevent HIV, not other sexually transmitted diseases. So it's a double-edged sword, PrEP.
It's one tool in the basket, and there's other tools that could be used with it, it sounds like.
Yes.
And how do you think we could go farther educating our community about some of the things you've shared?
People aren't going to like it, but it should be taught in schools. It should be taught in schools. You should be taught in schools about alcoholism, about HIV, how intercourse. And I'm not talking about gay intercourse. I'm just talking about intercourse in and of itself. How to prevent having a baby when you're 16 years old. And you're not even, HIV isn't even on the radar when you're 16 years old. You're thinking you're indestructible. But boy, I don't have children, so I don't think a school board would be willing to listen to me, but they take my tax dollar at the same rate as everybody else's tax dollar. I should have the right to have what my thoughts are in the school board as well as other people. And if you don't teach the history, you're going to repeat it. And it's such a sad state of affairs. You can walk through life with blinders on, like a horse would, but you can't escape reality. You can live in your own little bubble, but you really, really can't escape reality. And the reality is that HIV and AIDS is under control now, or it should be for most part, except for third world nations, but it should be there too. There should be no reason why the drugs can't be delivered. There's no reason at all. They have drones now that drop drugs everywhere.
So early education, access to all those safe prevention tools.
And having health care. Universal health care should be a part of everybody's life. I've been on Medicaid and I've been on private insurance, and I'll be honest with you, I'd rather be on Medicaid. This deductible stuff is really a sucky thing to have to deal with. Medicaid paid for everything. Your airline, your doctor visit, the taxi cab, that's all comes out of my pocket now. It's just crazy. I don't get it. I don't understand what the big fight is over healthcare when it's so much easier with a government-run one opposed to individuals. I don't understand what they're so scared of.
So reducing barriers to navigating the healthcare system.
Yes. Yes, but I don't want to get political about that. I don't. It's too black and white up here. It's a sad state of affairs.
So thinking more about our closer circles, how could we best support our loved ones if they're recently diagnosed with HIV?
Just to know that you're not alone. You're not alone, and there's a community out there that really does care about you. And if you're afraid to tell your parents that you seroconverted, that you're going to be pushed out of your family, then really you were too magnificent to be in that family initially anyway. And a classic example of it in my world was in 1972 when Gerald Ford was almost assassinated and the Marine that saved his life was gay. And for 24 hours, he was a hero. And after 24 hours, when the gay community outed him to try and prove a point that a Marine could be gay, he was vilified on the press. His family basically cut him off. He ended up an alcoholic, dying in his own his own apartment house in San Francisco, being buried in a plot when he could have gone to Arlington Cemetery. But he thought he was worthless because he was just a faggot. That's all he thought he was. And That's not true. He was a hero, just like any one of those people that died in the early 1980s in clinical trials were heroes. The young people that are out today, the transgenders, I couldn't be more proud of them. Because when they're 18 and they're out, I wasn't out at 18. I was very closeted. And the ironic thing is everybody knew I was gay, but just wouldn't talk to me about it. It's so sad, but I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. It's just, really, I am one of the few people that you will see that my age that is alive from the 1980s. Because there's a lost generation. There was no mentoring. And I don't mean mentoring to be gay. I mean mentoring to walk you through how to do this properly, how to not feel like you're less than everybody else, because you're not. You have to empower yourself first, though. You can't get your self-esteem from anybody else other than yourself. You have to do it for yourself, by yourself. You can't be with anybody until you're comfortable with yourself. And if you're living in a closet, you're not living comfortably with yourself.
So it's important for people to not feel alone and to work on self-acceptance.
Always. Always. And you'll fall down, you'll pick yourself up. But at the end of the day, you'll look in the mirror and you'll know you're a better person than you were yesterday because you tried. And you'll get a lot of flack. You will. You'll get a lot of flack from a lot of people telling you, just follow the norms. Just be in the closet. You can do whatever you want. But that's such a disservice to yourself. And I'm not saying go up to people and say, I'm gay. If you have a problem with it, deal with it. I'm just saying be yourself. And for the most part, everybody will accept you for who you are because they have their own baggage to carry. No one should be judging anybody on any other front other than themselves. Because until you get yourself perfect, you have no right to judge anybody else.
It's important to live authentically.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And these young people today, I think they really have it nailed down. I really do. I couldn't be more proud of them in some respects. They know what they want.
Sounds like it takes a lot of bravery and courage.
Well, I don't know if it takes bravery and courage as much as being true to yourself. And it does take a little bravery. A little. It's hard coming out. It is. It's hard coming out, especially if you're in a conservative family that you know will not accept you for who you are. That you know you're going to have to move out of the house at 16 or 15 years old and your family will have nothing to do with you ever again. That's scary. That's really scary. Having to move in with friends and living on the street, that really sucks. That really does suck. I only lived on the street one day and my friends said, you aren't going to sleep on the cement again. And I never did. But it's cold and scary out there if you're alone. It really is. It really is. And no one should have to do it. No one should ever have to do it.
And I hear you saying that there are people that are accepting and welcoming in the Fairbanks community so that no one has to feel alone.
Yes, there are lots of people in this community. This is a good community. It doesn't make any difference if you're to the right or left. They're all wonderful people. They just have certain little stigmas that you as a human being have to try and break those stereotypical images from. I know really, really butch men that you would never, ever, ever expect to be gay. And then there's people that you would know that are gay just by how they dress and how they talk. And the same thing with women. I know very, very beautiful women that are lipstick lesbians, quote unquote. You'd never know that they were lesbians. Not all of the lesbians walk around in black t-shirts and no makeup and short hair, and you'd almost think they were men. But it's across the board. It just is.
We have to challenge the stereotypes.
Yes. Just be who you want to be. If you want to be butch, be butch. If you want to be effeminate, be effeminate. If you want to be butch one day and effeminate the next day, be that. But no matter what, just be true to yourself.
That's the end of the list. Do you have any other thoughts that have come up that you want to share?
I really, really, really need my list real fast. I don't think so. Oh, okay, I can do that. No, I think that's it. All I have to say is life is precious and much too short. Just be yourself. And hopefully we'll all get through all of this together. And there's bigger fish to fry right now. And not World's AIDS Day shouldn't just be one day a year. It's every day of the year because we're all living with it. Whether or not you have HIV or not, whether or not you think you are removed from the gay community or not, you know somebody that's gay. You more than likely know somebody that's HIV positive. You're going to be faced with it one way or another sometime in your life, so you might as well make every day World's AIDS Day. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.